It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. Over the coming months, I am going to be doing a series of interviews about the war in Ukraine and what is at stake, not just for the Ukrainians fighting for their freedom and independence, but for America and for democracies around the world. Even though Congress just passed a significant aid package to Ukraine, the fight to repel the Russian invasion will be grueling. And in the months that Republicans in Congress delayed that aid, countless Ukrainians died, and the Russian military was given time to regroup. However, the greater threat by far would be the election of Donald Trump, his promised rejection of our NATO allies, and his likely abandonment of Ukraine, which is why our election is critical, not just to the preservation of American democracy, but democracy around the world. Trump's sympathies for Russia and Vladimir Putin are well known, and he has powerful enablers on this issue within the Republican Party. My guest today is a former U.S. Army colonel now living in Kyiv who has dedicated himself since Russia's invasion to supporting Ukraine's defense. But first, as a quick reminder, here is one of those Trump enablers and Putin apologists, J.D. Vance, telling us all what he really thinks about the defense of democracy.
Country. And I think it's ridiculous that we're focused on this border in Ukraine. I got to be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
My guest today is Sam Hartwell, a retired Army colonel who was briefly returned home after 2 years in Ukraine. Based in Kyiv, Sam has been assisting multiple humanitarian aid organizations. I brought him on the show to talk about his efforts, the state of the war, and what's at stake. Sam, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we just played that clip of J.D. Vance during his senatorial campaign, my senator from Ohio, I am embarrassed to say, saying that he doesn't care one way or another what happens in Ukraine. At the time, there was some outrage expressed in response to that statement, but it has become kind of normal within the Republican Party today. You have senior Republicans delaying the aid to Ukraine. You have perhaps fringe Republicans, but certainly influential ones, saying that Putin is actually our friend, not Zelensky. How do you respond to that kind of behavior from the party that was once the party of national security?
Yeah, I too am from Ohio, and I'm ashamed that Vance would think that Ukraine is not important and that Putin is our friend. He is our sworn enemy. Every single day, he's telling his people that America and NATO are behind all their problems, and that he states openly that he wants to destroy NATO, that he wants to go back to the old days, the pre-NATO borders when Warsaw Pact still existed. They've said openly that, yeah, we did interfere with your elections and we're going to continue to interfere with your elections. You probably just saw the Havana syndrome reports that are coming out and what Russia is up to with their assassination unit. I've been told by Ukrainians who are following what's going on inside Russia, they do every day. We can't. We don't follow anything. Our news doesn't report anything. But inside the Russian army now, they have a song that says, "We are screwing NATO," and we're using the F word, of course. That is what's going on inside Russia. Now, if J.D. Vance and others think that NATO is not important, let's back up a second. Our national security and prosperity has depended on our political and international security arrangements since the end of World War II. From Japan and Korea all the way to Europe, of course, that has preserved an international order that has allowed for commerce and mutual prosperity, and the political links between us and Europe, and then Europe and the rest of the world, is what has created this prosperity in the United States.
Now, I want to play this clip of Donald Trump saying that if the Europeans don't pay their bills, and I'm putting that in air quotes intentionally,
yeah,
that he will let Putin do whatever he wants when it comes to NATO. Let's play the clip. I'll get your reaction afterwards.
I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. They couldn't believe the answer. And everybody, you never saw more money pour in to Secretary General Stoltenberg. Well, I don't know if he is anymore, but he was my biggest fan. He said, all these presidents came in, they'd make a speech, they'd leave, and that was it. And they all owed money, and they wouldn't pay it. I came in, I made a speech, and I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Sam, talk to us about Article 5, our obligations, our treaty obligations to NATO members, and what it signifies that a former commander-in-chief, potentially the next commander-in-chief, would abandon our allies because of his affinity for a tyrant, Vladimir Putin.
No one would ever trust us again. No one should ever trust us again. And for a president, a former president, to say that I will personally abrogate a treaty that has kept global security for the last 50 plus years is absolutely abhorrent. Again, the linkages between us and Europe, particularly politically and economically, is what has made America prosperous. It's beyond me that he could think that we can go it alone and just let Putin do whatever he wants. He destroyed Chechnya. Now he wants to destroy Ukraine. He'll turn Ukraine into a Chechen state that is antagonistic to the West. And there'll be another global, at least European, if not global, war in 5 to 7 years. The Europeans are planning on it. But you don't say that I'm just going to walk away from the treaty. He's a businessman. He knows that easily he could say, all right, we'll raise tariffs if you don't invest. But to say that I'm not going to defend you selectively it'll destroy the relationship and the economic and political ties between us and Europe. If Russia is allowed to win, then the Europeans will have to kowtow to Russia.
I think it's clear to most people who understand Trump's thinking that his skepticism towards NATO is less about some business proposition than it is about his affinity for Putin. He actually favors the Putinist model of governance. And you have some historical perspective here. You were on the front lines of the Cold War. You literally stood in the Fulda Gap, facing down those Russian divisions that would be the first to come through. Putin's vision for revanchist Russia is expansive. It doesn't end with Ukraine. It doesn't even end with the Baltics necessarily. He has ambitions for greater Russia that, if we really understood, would terrify us.
First of all, the easy play. If he loses, if he wins in Ukraine, we lose big time. We lose a great partner, a great military ally. But then Putin easily walks into Moldova, where he still has a battalion, basically, in the Transnistria region. The Baltics are then easy. They won't even be able to fight. They'd be done in 6 days. And then he wants Poland. Absolutely. Okay. And if he can't get what he wants politically, he will use force. Won't be tanks. His ground forces are awful, but the missile forces and drone forces will be catastrophic. And that will force the Europeans to kowtow to Russia. And then we've lost the relationship.
Can you talk about some of the lies being spread, the disinformation being amplified by leaders within the Republican Party about where the money is going in Ukraine, about the risks to Americans. Help us dispel some of those myths.
Right. I can start with the main one. Europe is not doing enough. This is what I hear from even some of my best friends who are in support of Ukraine. That narrative is absolutely wrong. I've detailed analyses from Europe, actually, on the American contribution and the European contribution. The Americans, we have contributed a total of about $75 billion in total aid, of which 46 billion of that is actual military equipment. Equipment that, by the way, we're not going to use, that it was there actually for the defense of Europe, and Europe needs it now, precisely in Ukraine. It is equipment that we're going to replace with new stuff that, these ATACMS missiles, for example, are going to be replaced by a new model. It'll cost more, I'm sure, to decommission these weapons than simply give them to the Ukrainians to help them defend themselves, okay? Ukraine was attacked by Russia. We're helping them defend themselves with old equipment, already paid for. And by the way, anything new that we that's already on the drawing board that we buy, benefits the United States in terms of U.S. jobs. And by the way, most of that is produced in Republican districts. Then there's a small amount, say $25 billion, that goes into actual humanitarian support. And that I say to the Christians, these far-right Christians who keep saying, talking about how Christian that they are, humanitarian aid for a great friend of the United States. Ukraine is a great friend of the United States. People don't realize that they fought alongside us in Afghanistan and Iraq. I met some of those troops in Afghanistan when I was there, and actually I met them again in Ukraine. Incredible accident, but I did. On the European side, Europeans not doing enough? Wait a second. 156 billion they have contributed in terms of military equipment and humanitarian aid. They've done mostly in humanitarian aid, more in humanitarian aid than we have, by the way. And their equipment is the type of equipment that actually Ukraine needs more than our own equipment. The former Soviet tanks that they're used to, the T-72 upgraded models, which are pretty good, and artillery and so on. And I can supply you later. You want these both of these analyses. One was from a German institute, and the other from a Turkish institute. When people think that maybe Turkey is kind of playing in the middle, a little on side of Russia, a little on side of NATO. But that analysis was very, very precise, country by country, showing the money and the equipment given by the Europeans. Now, on a GDP basis, can I just finish that one? Germany, for example, Germany, with a population of 85 million people, is given $35 billion in total aid. We, United States, with 330 million people, have given, as I said, 75 billion in aid. When you do the math, it works out that on a per person basis, they're given much more than we are. And then if you convert that as a part of GDP, then it's something like 4 times more than we're giving as a percentage of GDP.
What is the effect of the delay in passing the latest aid package for Ukraine? You've been on the ground. You've seen what the Ukrainian defenders are having to fight with. What does it mean that we are no longer resupplying them the way we were?
I'm sad to say that I think that now it's impossible for them to get back Crimea. They tell me I'm wrong. The intel guys that I talk to, the Ukrainian intel guys that I talk to, still feel like they can get Crimea back. But the point is, when they're being outgunned with artillery 7-1 on a daily basis, 7 rounds to 1, that they're going to be out of ammunition here shortly. Now, they've fought heroically. They've only given up about 10 miles in certain parts of the front since December, when the aid stopped. But I'm told also that it's going to take another 90 days. I hope that's wrong, but it'll take another 90 days to get aid flowing again, and that would be catastrophic. The worst possible situation was that the Russians could get close to Dnieper and start shelling it the way that they're shelling Kyiv now. That was the direct effect of not supporting Ukraine. Was that now Kyiv is now being evacuated. All the electricity and the water supplies have been taken out by these long-range missiles just in the last 30 days.
And can you, because you talk to some of the special operations folks cycling to the front and back.
Yeah.
What is the human cost of having to defend their country without America's support? And what do they say to you? I mean, I can't imagine how their conversations with an American must go. On one hand, desperate for our support. On the other hand, frustrated that we make promises we don't deliver on.
Yeah, they're averaging, as I was told when I left, about 1,000 amputee patients per month. I've seen these guys, I have photos, I have video, single, double, and triple amputations. And what amazes me about these guys is that they're so resilient, so happy to be alive. Their families are around them. With a guy who didn't even have to join the army because he had 3 kids. I've seen several of these guys come back as triple amputees. 1,000 of these amputee patients a month. Only 200 can be serviced or treated by the Ukrainian medical system. Another 100 can be taken care of by NGOs and foreign governments outside of Ukraine. But that leaves us 700 a month amputees that are building that have no treatment. And that's expensive technology to do it. Then there's the TBI industry injuries, which are, in my mind, the most important that need to be dealt with right now, because as you know, the TBI wounded, they need treatment right away, or they will remain in a vegetative state and they will not be able to rehabilitate in any way. And they're getting hundreds of these guys a month. They don't have precise figures on that, but I've seen some of the guys. The Russians are using these 500 to 2,500 glide bombs that come from as far as 20 kilometers away, I'm told, and there's nothing you can do against those. And they used 60 of those a day in Avdiivka, one of the last major battles. It never ends. Now, you talk about, and that's the military cost, but on the civilian side, Kyiv is now being pummeled. It's being evacuated. And those folks, there's already 7 million Ukrainians that had to leave and have sanctuary in Europe. And the Europeans are picking up that cost. That's another big cost that the Europeans are picking up. And so the internally displaced was at about 15 million, and that's moving up to, it's got to be close to 20 million now.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I have been so humbled by the support of this audience and the speed at which this show has grown. You are why I and the whole team here do this. If you're interested in bonus content, check out my Patreon page. It's free to sign up, and there's an option to donate as well. The link is right there and in the show notes. Thanks again. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. The key to metabolic health is something called metabolic flexibility, and that's where Lumen really shines. It refers to your body's ability to efficiently switch between using different fuel sources like carbs and fats. There are preferred times to use each, and how well you can switch places you on the metabolic flexibility spectrum. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. After getting to know you through your breath, Lumen gives you a metabolic flex score that you can track and improve upon. So, if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me and use BOATS to get $100 off your Lumen. That's lumen.me and use BOATS at checkout for $100 off. Thanks, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Can you talk about the spirit of the Ukrainian people? I mean, the war has gone on and on and on, and surely there must be fatigue setting in. In spite of that, I continue to hear stories about incredible bravery from soldiers and civilians alike.
Yeah, I don't, fatigue, anger, I think is increases far more than fatigue. These folks, they just don't give up. That's why I love living there, and I live in Kyiv. The bravery and the resiliency of these folks, they don't even care about the missile sirens anymore. They just continue on as if it's nothing. The kids, I feel bad for because they can't go to normal school anymore. They're doing schooling like even underground in some places. But the anger, I mean, to the point where when people talk about the Russians will use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, which is nonsense. I could talk about that later if you want. But as the Ukrainians say, you know what? Bring it. You want to do this? Bring it. But we're still not going to quit. We can run out of ammunition. We can, there's not going to be any cutting and running. They will fight to the death.
Why do you think that message is falling on deaf ears in the Republican-controlled Congress? Why do they continue to come up with excuses to delay the aid? Why are they tying it to unrelated bills? Is that just a smokescreen to appease Trump, or is there a strategy behind it?
There's no strategy, that's for sure, other than to oppose. You oppose the side on any that you want to defeat on any basis. They're supporting Trump, the Trump line, and if Trump has his base that will accept anything that he says, so they will make up any excuse necessary to support a Trump line of reasoning. So many fallacies out there. The most egregious one, I think, that I just heard recently is that Ukrainians are persecuting Christians. Oh my God, that's absolutely the opposite. Okay, and I hear that from the likes of J.D. Vance, Rand Paul, that fellow Massey, also from Kentucky, Getz and Green and all of them. That is absolutely ridiculous. In Ukraine, 90%, more than 90% of that country believes in God. The latest that I've seen in the United States is that about 50% still believe in God. Ukraine is a country that has Greek Catholic, Ukrainian Orthodox, Jewish, Muslim, Protestant, and Baptist. Okay, there was the Russian Orthodox Church was there, but the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow controlled, is known to be controlled by the FSB, the former KGB. The Kirill, who runs it, is a Soviet Soviet trained KGB agent. And he, by the way, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but he has just declared the war against Ukraine as a holy war. So who's Christian and who's not Christian? And I say to our American Christians, of which I am one, a Reagan-style Christian, I don't wear it on my sleeve, but by God, if my friends are dying and in desperate need of assistance, I, as a Christian, am obligated to go help. That's what I've been doing for 2 years. And how these folks cannot help and resist that kind of support to their fellow Christians is just beyond me. It's hypocrisy beyond belief. Now, I've been to 2 Easter Masses in Ukraine. The first one was right after the war started. That was in their Easter at the time, I think, was in late April of that year. And it was the most religious experience I think I've ever had. I mean, you could feel the presence of a higher power in that Greek Catholic church in Lviv. It was fantastic. So that's rubbish, absolutely rubbish.
How do you explain Trump's affinity for Putin? This is a topic we have mined well on this show, but I haven't talked to someone about it in the context of his abandonment of Ukraine. I mean, he obviously sees Putin as an ally when it comes to domestic politics. He approves of his approach to governance. He's very skeptical of NATO, but the abandonment of Ukraine seems to be as much about pleasing Putin as it is about whatever the Ukrainians are doing.
I can't believe that he's so naive to think that he could make a deal with Putin. When I listen to him talk and I see the things that he says, it was telling that when he was getting a briefing from his national intelligence chief, that he cut that person off and said, I know all about that. Orban already told me everything. Now he's going to listen to Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, little country of 10 million people. And Orban is known in Europe to have received his first political money, his first donation from Putin, $1 million or €1 million many years ago. He was bought by Putin. In fact, Hungary is still the only country in Europe that gives a Schengen visa to Russians. It's the only country that still gives a golden passport, I think they call it, to Russians. And that is, if you give €1 million to an organization inside Hungary that his party, Orban's party, supports, then you get an automatic citizenship. So it's a Trojan horse for Russia. And I know people don't know this in the United States. The Europeans know it. Russians can come into Hungary and then go wherever they want in Europe under a Schengen visa, and as citizens anywhere else that they want in Europe. So why he would listen to Orban is beyond me. And now why the affinity to Putin, other than, Trump wants to be a strongman. He does not believe in American style liberal democracy. And that's the part that really, really scares me. All the other policies, the border and trade and China. I get all that. A lot of people get all that. And I'll never be able to change the opinions of some of those people on the support for Trump. I'm trying to change people's opinions on the support for Ukraine and the support for Europe. Our fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers fought 2 world wars to establish this international security architecture that has allowed us to prosper and maintain peace for 50 years. And this government, the United States, there's many, many intelligent people in this country who understand the importance of those relationships, but he doesn't. And this could really push us and Europe into a 3rd world war at some point.
I want to end with your explanation of the return on investment that Americans are getting in Ukraine.
Yeah.
For the aid that we have sent, for the aid that's proposed. It's a lot of money. I mean, $75 billion could be spent in other ways. But what is the return that we're getting as the Ukrainians actually do the fighting themselves? Because none of them are asking us to bleed and die in their defense. They're just asking for ammo.
Absolutely. Now, and let me just back up a second there. That $75 billion, $45 billion of that 75 is equipment that's already paid for, that we're not going to use, that we actually need to dispose of most of it. Give it to them to defend themselves. We're going to replace it anyway. Those result in American jobs in Republican-controlled districts, most of all. That alone is a great return on investment. If we give, as Senator Graham, who I know supports Ukraine, but his hands are tied, has said, as Senator Graham has said, 5% of our defense budget that is degrading our number one enemy, which Trump doesn't realize it yet, but he's going to, are degrading our number one enemy is a fantastic return on investment. If Russia is allowed to win in Ukraine, we will lose the best ally that we never had. The Ukrainian military, with a million men under arms, 500,000 with combat experience, the best intelligence system against the Russians that in the world, far better than anything the Europeans or we have. This is fantastic return on investment in terms of security and in terms of economics and in terms of preserving an international security order in Europe.
Well, Sam, thank you for that clear distillation. I want to end with this clip of the Prime Minister of Australia describing from firsthand experience Trump's affinity for Putin. Describes him as a 12-year-old boy trying to impress the football team captain. If it weren't so chilling, it would be funny. Thanks again, Sam. We'll roll the clip.
The Republican Party under Donald Trump, and particularly the right wing of the Republican Party, are very sympathetic to Vladimir Putin. I mean, I've been with Trump and Putin. Trump is in awe of Putin. He's when you see Trump with Putin, as I have on a few occasions, he's like the 12-year-old boy that goes to high school and meets the captain of the football team. My hero. It is really creepy. It's really creepy.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.